Sounds right. Hello, everyone. My name is Kristin Snowden. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California. And this is a webinar dedicated to all things relationships. I say it's all the stuff that we would have, should have, could have learned had we had the environment where we were allowed to learn. Instead, we kind of find our way through relationships and the messiness that often surfaces through trial and error and role models that just aren't that great at role modeling, quite frankly. Happy New Year. Today, we're going to cover what I feel like are the three categories of the heaviest hitters, the things that betrayed partners struggle most with when they're dealing with betrayal or addiction. And so I like to explain that, by the way, this is uncovering anything from a substance use disorder, gambling issues, pornography issues, all the way over to other process addictions like sexually acting outside the marriage, even down to just maybe a single affair, because it all is experienced in our body as betrayal. So I wanted to just say that I've spent like my life's work for the past decades been focused on educating the masses on addiction recovery and also infidelity recovery. I know that those two don't sound like they're related in any kind of way, but if you watch all my YouTube videos, you kind of start seeing the common themes that are involved in both those behaviors and choices. So working in treatment centers, I've become very passionate about educating on the causes of addiction, relationship crises, general unhappiness in life, depression, anxiety. But I've also been working with the people who love those people as well, the betrayed partners who find themselves kind of dealing with this new devastating reality that there's been these secret behaviors going on underneath them. Why I'm so passionate about talking about this stuff is because our general population is just grossly misinformed about all the pieces and the causes and the ways to get recovery from addiction or post-betrayal. So when I educate on addiction, I try to help them understand the biological and neurological components that are involved. And then when I educate on betrayal, I try to help everyone understand that it's not just about the cheating. It's not just about the infidelity. The pain and trauma goes so much deeper than that. And it's more than just the devastation of a potentially like, I found this out, now my marriage might end. I can't trust my partner anymore. It's more than just the feeling of like hurt or anger that you might have towards your partner saying, how could you do such a thing to me? How could you do such a thing outside our relationship, behind my back, unbeknownst to me? So today, I hope that you're listening. This is not just for the betrayed partners. This is for those who might have been doing the behaviors outside the relationship, because it's really important that you realize I find these three heavy hitters when the betrayed partners are in states of struggle. You can kind of filter through and categorize them under one of these three categories. And these three heavy hitters are the betrayal trauma, so the trauma component, the way our bodies stored this traumatic event and how it continues to manifest and show up in our lives. The shame, so the shame story that we're constantly writing, usually often it's very subconscious. It doesn't feel rational or true, but it's still a story that we say to ourselves, and we need to unravel that and understand it and process it. And then three, the grief and loss that we have to go through, that walk through and acknowledge to kind of get to the other side. So when partners are in deep struggle, you'll find that the struggles can tend to be under these three categories. So the more education I can provide you on what these three things are and provide you examples of how they might be showing up in your life, the more effective it's going to feel, the more empowered you're going to feel when you're trying to verbalize this to your partner, when you're in the recovery stage, or verbalize it to your therapist, or verbalize it to your kid's teacher. You're trying to explain, your coworkers, and try to explain why you are not yourself right now, why you're struggling so much. Again, you don't necessarily need to defend yourself, but I've learned that the general population makes lots of inaccurate assumptions based on lots of misinformation. So while you don't have to defend yourself, I think it really helps the people around you when you can explain these three things to them and they go, oh God, okay, that's what we're dealing with here. It's so much more than marital issues or a relationship crisis. So let's dive in. The first of the three heavy hitters is betrayal trauma. There are so many videos. If you type in Kristin Snowden betrayal trauma, you will see so many things where I get into the neurobiology of it, the therapeutic interventions, the science-based interventions you can use to try to unravel it. Because what is trauma? What do you need to know? Most importantly, is that trauma is another word for saying your body has wired itself. It has altered its wiring around something that happened in your life that felt very overwhelming. It does not need to mean that someone put a gun to your head and it literally was life or death. It can mean that. Obviously, your brain's going to record that as traumatic event and sear it in your brain. However, having your partner walk in and say, after 20 years of marriage, I'm going to be leaving you, or I don't want to be in this relationship anymore, your body will record that just as strongly as if you had a gun to your head. And there's MRIs that kind of prove that your body records it. Your brain's job is not to keep you happy or stable. Your brain's first and foremost job is to keep you alive. And so it is constantly scanning the atmosphere, your environment, I should say, looking for signs that you're unsafe, and it will record anything that remotely makes you feel like you can't make it. You don't know how to get through this. So what is trauma? I'm not going to go deep into this because I want to summarize all three quickly, which is anything where you feel the four C's: the loss of control, the loss of choice, the loss of context, and the loss of connection. So those would be loss of control. That's like the number one thing that causes your body to lose, to wire itself around something very serious. So let me say that again: to take an incident, to take an experience, sear it into your wiring, to have you have a very strong reaction from this moment going forth, because it wants you to remember this person's dangerous, this situation's dangerous, this could kill you, and it wants you to show up with hypervigilance, really strong adrenaline. And the unfortunate thing about it is that your brain, at least the survival part of your brain, just puts a general wide swath. The example I've used before is those giant Newfoundland dogs that look kind of like bears from a distance. They're like cuddly and cute and might like lick you to death, but they're not dangerous. But from a distance, your body might look at that and say, it looks like a bear, it's the color of a bear, it's moving on all four legs like a bear. Holy crap, it's a bear, run. And then it'll ignite all your survival systems to get you the heck out. It does the same thing with your partner. Might make a look on their face. You might hear a song that's tied into the trauma. You drive down a similar street and it's all wired in to come up to keep you safe. So your brain survival system is not accurate. It's not built on keeping you sane. It's built and sane and high functioning and having complex thoughts and feelings, and this is who I am, and these are my values, and this is how I want to assert myself and show myself. It doesn't care about any of that. It cares about keeping you alive. And it records generally anytime you feel like you've lost control, lost your choice, lost your context, and lost your connection. And anytime you generally feel like you don't know how to get out of this alive. And so I just want you to note that betrayal is traumatic. because what's happening is, remember, we're neurobiologically wired to connect with other people. It's an extremely vulnerable act to invite another entity, another like human species that we have no control over. They can think what they want, they can say what they want, they can feel what they want. I have teenage daughters, so I'm feeling that right now. But like, it's so vulnerable to love them and want to be loved and seen and protected by them, but wanting to love and see and protect them and build this life with this other wily thing called a human. But nonetheless, we are wired to do that. All of our feel-good hormones come out when we are doing it successfully, and all of our horrible, like wretched physical like feelings come out when we are failing at that. So betrayal is trauma because we have put ourselves out there with another human being. We've, if you're in a marriage, you've agreed. There's been either literal commitments through marital ceremonies or rings or promises that, we're going to be a team. I'm going to put us first. I'm going to think about you when I make decisions. And then suddenly you uncover that unknown addiction. Where's the money? Wow, the porn use has really gotten out of hand. Wow, the substance use has gotten out of hand. Holy moly, you were acting out with those women or men outside our relationship. I had no idea. Pull the rug underneath from underneath you, and suddenly you're questioning everything, because that survival brain is just generally saying you can't trust that person. What else can't you trust? You made a bad decision with that one. Who else is lying to you, and who else have you put yourself around that you can't trust? So most acts of infidelity and addiction are acts of betrayal because they tend to involve chronic patterns of lying, either directly or by omission, gaslighting, which is that psychological manipulation where the addict or the betrayer, the one having the affair or having the secret substance abuse issue, constantly denies the partner's reality. The partners know something is off. They know either because their partner's having angry outbursts or starting fights for no reason, or they're getting strange block calls, or they're making up reasons why they can't be home, X, Y, and Z. And they keep saying, what's going on? Something's going on. Why are you acting this way? It's not making sense. And they gaslight them and say, no, you're crazy. You need to go on medication. Maybe if you wouldn't nag me so much, maybe you need to focus on taking care of the kids better, cleaning the house better, or you're the messed up one, right? That's gaslighting. That's extremely traumatizing, and that's a part of betrayal trauma. Patterns of denial, avoiding responsibility. So no, we have marital problems because you've been unhappy for so long and you've had so many issues for so long. That instead of, or saying, gee, why are you upset? It's just a couple beers at night, or it's just, a couple hundreds or thousands of dollars that I spend on this hobby of gambling. Or, okay, yeah, I just came clean that I was cheating on you, but like, I won't anymore. I'll stop. It's stopped. Okay. So patterns of denying and avoiding responsibility and maintaining, accountability, patterns of blaming the partner, patterns of being defensive, patterns of betrayed partners being chronically diminished, about their feelings, about what their needs are, about asking for things, about feeling sexual rejection, emotional abandonment, that this is too much, this needs too much, and there's something wrong with you, that you suddenly want to know where I am after finding out that I've been, every time I go on business travel, I've been having sex with prostitutes. Like, and now you want me to drop pins wherever I am? That's just weird. Who asked that? Wait, you want to know my computer history? No, that's weird. Why? So lots of diminishing the betrayed partner's needs, patterns of going back on commitments and promises, patterns of constantly telling the partner that their gut feeling is off. financial infidelity, right? Spending money without your partner or your family system in the forefront of your mind. Um, so, and then also the trauma, the betrayal trauma is also like, oh my God, I didn't even know there was this whole world out here. I thought like people got married, they stayed married, they built lives together. I didn't know there was this world of sex addicts or porn addicts or this whole world, dark world of what is out there on the internet to access should you want to access. And there's this trauma of like, oh my God, this is too much. I didn't even know. And don't forget, betrayal trauma can also be different based on your what we call complex trauma. If you had, let's say, a father or a mother that would often do those kind of things, the denying, the invalidating your feelings, the high defensiveness, going back on their commitments and promises, you might be more inclined to have a really strong traumatic event. So I'd encourage you to, if you want to know more about the betrayal trauma, I encourage you to look up, Kristin Snowden, betrayal trauma, and I get way deeper into that thing. But you need to understand how betrayal trauma is showing up in your life, how it's triggering you, that even though in this exact moment you may not be in a threat state, there might not be something dangerous threatening you, but your brain is just sensing a generalization of the look he's giving, the behaviors he's doing, the anniversary that's coming up, the environment that you're in, and it's smelling something remotely close to what was dangerous to you before, and firing up your whole body to respond. And it's this tough push pull with this trauma response. You don't want to lose that trauma response that kind of keeps your gut instincts fired up, ready to act, keep yourself safe, keep your family safe. But sometimes that trauma response can just come in and not be accurate. Like I said, you really are safe. You have so much more knowledge, you have so much more support, you have the ability to make it through what you once thought you couldn't make through. And now that information is not accurate anymore. And that's where these trauma responses can just be like carrying a 500-pound boulder. And there are treatments for it, EMDR, somatic experiencing, sometimes group work, internal family systems. And again, you can look that all up on previous videos. Second heavy hitter, shame. I, again, talk about shame all the time. You can look up Kristin Snowden shame, and I have a ton of videos on it. But the general situation is that often when I educate betrayed partners, when I do my groups on betrayal trauma and betrayed partners, I always cover shame because I know everybody is struggling with it. However, the most common response for betrayed partners is, I know shame's part of the addiction cycle. I know that my partner, when he or she is struggling with his acting out behaviors, or when he was in his acting out behaviors, was struggling with shame, but I don't understand how I have shame. I don't understand how, I mean, and the follow-up sentence is, I have nothing to be shameful about. So that's, what is it, semantics, like wordplay, which is the word shameful does not equal shame, just like the word humility doesn't equal humiliated. They're two very different sets of words. So we experience shame. You don't have to have done something wrong in order to be in a state of shame, versus when I am shameful, that is often saying I am shameful about something that I did. So just be careful with that. Shame is as natural and constant as our body needing to breathe, because every human that is wired to want to love, connect with others, share their stories, hear other people's stories, be seen and heard, validated, versus, avoiding, like the plague, being isolated, being invalidated, being ignored, feeling unloved, feeling unvalued. Anyone who has that wiring, which is probably all of you, has the capacity for shame. And so my quick summary for shame, and again, look it up more if you want to know, is it's this kind of messed up adaptation our body has done to keep us in a state of social connection. So the way I explain shame is, as long as I have the wiring, which constantly exists, I can't turn it off for better or worse, the desire to love, be seen, all those things I just listed, as long as I have that wiring and desire to be loved, connected, validated, valued, I will have an equal opposing force pushing back against me saying, oh, you want this so badly? What if you are too messed up for it? What if this is too much? What if it's not enough? What if it needs too many things? What if it has too much trauma? What if it says too many things? What if it's thrown too many things? I don't know, Kristin. Are you worthy of love and belonging? And why I think we have this wiring, this is just my theory from working with it for 10, 11 years or so at this point, is if our brain, whose job is to constantly scan this environment, decide what's dangerous and not dangerous, we would overload our brain if we really embraced how vulnerable we are to this world, that we could constantly be victim. I wouldn't leave the house. I wouldn't get out of bed if I knew I could slip down the stairs, or someone else could enter my home and shoot me, or I could get in that car accident, or something terrible could happen to my children, or my husband could lose his job, right? If our brain really focused in on all the horrible things that could happen, which probably actually right now, those in betrayal trauma find themselves in that state because that's their trauma response. But if it really all day, every day focused on that, we couldn't function. So what it tries to do is whittle down to something that it actually feels like it can assert control over, which is this guy. So almost everything that happens in life, even though it's a quiet voice often, and it doesn't feel true and often feels irrational, so we dismiss it. Oh, no, it's not, whatever. I don't think that. I have nothing to be shameful of. I'm not the one who did the bad thing. Really, if we whittle down, there's a little voice inside that we must acknowledge and talk about and process, which is what all of these things are saying about you, the story you tell yourself about you. So a really great example when I was educating betrayed partners on shame is one of the betrayed partners said, well, I get really furious when I find out my husband's lying, and it just infuriates me, and I'm just getting so angry. He's in shame. I don't understand how I'm in shame. And I said, well, when you sit there and you're yelling at your husband for catching him in another lie, what are you telling yourself? Well, that I'm angry at him. I hate him. Why can't he get his shit together? Okay, but what is it saying about you in the situation? And she says, well, how do I put up with this? How pathetic am I that I keep catching him in these lies and I stick around? What is wrong with me? Oh my God, if my girls found out that I'm sitting here through this, being treated this way, oh my gosh, if other people knew that I am sitting here with this man who keeps lying to me and the disrespect that I'm dealing with every day. There is always a shame story, ladies and gentlemen, always a story. And we have got to become more masterful at digging that layer deeper. It's not just about the content, right? That he was lying. That's the content of the problem. The context is the story that you are telling yourself about you. And it must be acknowledged, it must be a process. Just like the third and final heavy hitter, which is grief and loss. I just posted a webinar on grief and loss. So again, you can look it up and I talk about it in much further detail. But there is so much grief and loss processing that must occur before you can get to the other side of this traumatic betrayal. Grief and loss is a deep sense of loss, something we knew, something we loved, something we counted on, something we believed in is now gone. It could be a person, it could be a belief system, It could be a tangible thing or an intangible thing. And we don't know how we're going to move forward now that it is not there anymore, because it was so central to our daily life that I'm not sure what life looks like without it. And that includes longing and yearning for something, community loss, right? Where you can just, maybe you didn't directly experience the loss, but there's a lot of community suffering about the sadness of stuff that's going on in this world. So those are all different forms of grief and loss that, for a lot of the betrayed partners, there's this strange dichotomy where it's like, wow, I have essentially like a PhD in sex addiction and sex addiction recovery. And I've met some of these amazing women or men in the effort of trying to find like a supportive group. But also it's at the same time this collective grief and sadness that like all of us are dealing with this. Like we're all a part of this unfortunate community of unfortunate stories. And it's this life yin and yang of like this gratitude mixed in with this deep sadness. So there's so much loss. And again, I talk about this in grief and loss. For betrayed partners who are struggling with grief and loss, these are just some of the things that you're going to have to process potentially once you get to that stage, that phase of healing and recovery. So one of the biggest things is, remember, if I've been through trauma, I've lost what I feel like is my power and my choice and my understanding the context of what's going on, the connection that I feel safe with having with loved ones or people, or those all are things that I'm grieving, and I experienced this loss of safety because of it and security because of it. So obviously you need to find a way, the answer down the road is to reclaim some version of connection with, or improvement in, feeling like you can assert some kind of power, feeling like you do have a community, you have connection, you can share your story with some people, you can assert some choice in the matter, set boundaries, non-negotiables, context. I know now what sex addiction is, or addiction. I know, all the three heavy hitters that Kristin's talking about the three struggles and things that I'm having a hard time with, and I know how to talk about them because I can identify them. They don't just feel like dark clouds swarming around me. I have words for them, right? So loss is loss of safety and security, financial security, relationally with your partner and with anyone else in your life. And that constant fear of, is this going to happen again? When's the next shoe going to drop? All that. Loss of instincts and intuition because you've been gaslighted or emotionally abused for so many years, or invalidated, or told that you're crazy. Loss of memories, what you thought your family was, what you thought was happening on that vacation, but then you found out what was really happening on the vacation, what your partner was to you. Loss of confidence in your body image, your comfort with sexuality, loss of the ability to enjoy things that used to bring you joy, like the holiday season or birthdays, that restaurant, that music, etc. That other kind of hobby, music, travel, etc. Loss of what is normal. I didn't know that this existed. I didn't know that people went through this stuff, that people could do this to other people, that people could lie the way they lie. Loss of normal of how you might look to other people, if someone knew your story, really knew what was happening, how you would be perceived. Loss of, oh God, I always thought when like the S hit the fan, I'd keep myself together, or I'd be like, no, that's it, pack your stuff up and get out of the house. I love teenagers or 20 somethings. They always say, oh, if my partner ever cheated on me, I would blah, blah, blah. And it's so black and white and so obvious. And I'm sure we've all said things like that. And then here you are in this moment, your nightmare, And holy geez, it's not so black and white anymore. It's very gray, it's very murky, it's very scary. And there's this grief that you thought you were this like really hardcore badass, like black and white. I don't tolerate abuse. I don't tolerate these kind of things. And it's not so black and white anymore. And then loss of hopes and dreams. Now with the grief and loss, it's really important that you put words to it again. In my grief and loss webinar that I just did, I provided like a journal so you can kind of dive into it. I encourage it to be shared with other people. Grief kind of collectively shared helps with the healing, helps you kind of integrate it into your heart and brain and grieve it, but yet move through it. And there's more in those previous webinars. And then before I go to questions, because I don't want to forget, I want to let everyone know that I just created a new website. And so take a minute to go to kristinsnowden.com. And as a celebration or a launching event, I'm offering a coupon, $100 off my course with the coupon code New Year 100 for the relationship masterclass that I offer. But really, I just love for you to just check out the new website, the new resources, the new structure, give me feedback. And I'm looking forward to hearing your questions.
So, I was struck by, you're right, they're the heavy hitters. And I get so many calls and people are like, I didn't even know. And, and I was like, no one knows about, you mentioned this, no one knows about this stuff until you have to, because you get into a relationship and you really do think, it's the two of us and we're in this and we've taken our vows if you're married, or your connection, and you really have this belief about each other, and then this hits. But there, you talked about shame. I hear that with partners often is like, yes, while they can put it as shameful behavior on their addict, they are also taking on the shame of, how did I not know this? And, and why do I stay in all of that? But when you were talking about the yin and yang, I really do talk about, there's such a paradox. And I was smiling when you're talking about the young people that, well, if that ever happened to me, I would just leave. And it's not that black and white. You're right, because there's this truth of, and I think it's the longer you've been with somebody, your reality is really shaken. You're going, was that really true? But then there's all of these moments and things that were really true, and then there's this really horrible, yucky stuff. So it isn't black and white. I was thinking with all of these, you can't well, you can hope for, but it doesn't happen. Like that I'm gonna get through the betrayal trauma, I'm gonna get through the shame, I'm gonna get through all of this stuff, and the grief and loss, I'm going to do all of my work, and then it's all going to be perfect, because things are going to come back, circle around, right, and poke you. Now, hopefully, as you've moved through them, and I always talk about it in that language, as you've moved through it, because you can't just shove it up in a shelf in the closet and, shove more stuff in the closet and go, yep, all done. I mean, it really is the process of moving through. And, you talked about, doing it in community, doing it with other people, like we were talking about doing these exercises and sharing them with others. Yeah, that reduces the shame, but it also helps, the burden shared is a burden lightened, that all of that. Well,
and it rewires your neurobiology to say, I can talk about this and other people can validate it and understand it. And this isn't as scary as it was when I was talking about it 6 months ago. Yeah. I mean, it's rewiring in the brain for sure.
And that's so scary to be willing to take that little step and go, like, I'm going to share this with somebody, because again, that's, putting that vulnerability out there of like, if I share this, will I be rejected? I was also thinking about when you're going like that, there's that equal pressure, of like, am I enough, or am I too much? Or, all of those voices, that are constantly, pushing back against our, just trying to be connected and, accepted within the world. So, but, life is so interesting, isn't it? And, for those, no addict ever chooses this. That, that comes from, maladaptive coping mechanism, brokenness, all of that stuff. No partner ever chooses this. No one, said, yeah, I'm gonna, let's say, get married. I'm gonna get married, and in year 27, I'm gonna have
Mhm.
discovery and find out that all of this stuff has been going on since before I ever met. That doesn't happen. So it really is, okay, this is your reality right now, and how do you, get the resources, get the support so that you can take the next step and move forward. So, okay, so we've got questions. All this wired stuff, even though you're an expert and know so much, I miss the part where you have to build a connection with self first and then build from there. Every webinar you repeat this others connection, and it annoys me so much. Well, thank you for sharing that.
When I say the words like integration and connection, I'm actually talking about both, right?
Mhm.
Like I said, these webinars, you can't speak it to other people, to a therapist or to your partner. I'm feeling this, I'm going through this trauma, I'm going through this shame, I'm going through this grief period, without it first
Yeah.
connecting to yourself in an internal state, understanding, having that conversation with yourself, feeling, right? There's that thinking part of your body, and then there's that feeling part of your body below your neck. So when I say it needs to be integrated, it needs to be said in connection, I'm also saying that it's needing to be done within yourself first. So.
And I honestly, from my standpoint, I was like, I don't think I could have done that. Like, I was so disconnected from self. I needed others
Mhm,
to model that for me. And I
mhm.
think so honestly, I honor that you have the ability to do that first. That I don't think I could have done that, because I was so disconnected and I needed other people to model. Like, I couldn't have gotten into the, I'm a person of value. I needed other people to help me understand, all of that. I was really shut down. And so
Mhm.
it was super important for me to connect with others. And then I was able to start integrating that into myself. And maybe, yeah, I mean, like I said, rock on that you're able to do that
Yeah.
from your standpoint first. I really needed others. For me, I know the most dangerous place is here, like in here, the space between there, the negative self-talk. As much work as I've done still comes up. So that validating my reality with other people. This is an aside, but last night there was some stuff going on, and my husband was watching a TV program, and I normally don't interrupt him in that moment. I went and interrupted. I said, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting your TV. I need you right now, and because I need to, process through this. And he stopped. But normally I have the bandwidth to be able to, like, do more of that stuff on my own. In that moment, I couldn't. So to me, I really have to lean into others, at times. So it's all of it, like, if we are not fully integrated, with
Mhm.
others and ourselves, if we're compartmentalized, which addicts are, oh my goodness, we're so good at compartmentalizing and dissociating and stuff like that. So pulling all of those pieces together and being one authentic self with ourselves and with others is what the recovery journey, is about. So, but I'm
Yeah,
so
and
glad you're
often
here.
it's only the sting of someone else saying something to you, right? Usually the addiction doesn't stop until someone else creates consequences for you for the addiction. Or just even as benign as, I remember talking to a friend years ago, and she was upset about something her husband did, and it was focused on his behavior. And I was like, it sounds like you feel like your husband doesn't make you a priority. And she was like, no,
Mhm.
no, 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 that's not it. I'm so angry he's doing X, Y, and Z. And then the next day she calls me and she's like, you're absolutely right.
Mhm.
I am angry that he doesn't make me a priority. Like, all of these things he's doing are essentially telling me I am not the priority. And so that was done. She connected to it
Mhm.
internally because
Mhm.
of feedback given externally. But
Yes.
yeah, it can be done
Yeah.
either way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Really, there's, and I think that's the beauty of all of this, but it's also the challenge that it isn't like you do this and then you do that and then you do that and everything's all better. It really is, finding the tools that work for you to help you continue to move forward, on your path. So, okay, the next question from a betrayed partner: what can help me rebuild trust in myself during the recovery process? With the grief, I can't seem to get anything done, and I've lost a lot of context who I felt like I was, a productive, bubbly, and outgoing person.
It's
Hear that
very so
often.
common.
Yeah.
Um, I know the previous person won't appreciate this, but I think one way to reconnect with your instincts and intuition is to be talking it out with another person, other betrayed partners. Because, like I said, there's been so much minimizing of like my needs or invalidating of what I'm thinking and feeling. And I have a pretty good fire alarm system in my
Mm-hmm.
head about, oh, this doesn't feel right. I don't like
Mm-hmm.
this. I feel safer if it was this situation. But I've had an external source, i.e., my
Mm-hmm.
acting out partner, telling me that's wrong. It's absurd that I
Mm-hmm.
need that. That's weird. That's a strange thing to ask. What's wrong with you? So, a countermeasure to that is to be around other betrayed partners or people who specialize in this and say, hey, is it okay for me to for at least the next couple of months to be checking his internet history or checking where he is to actually confirm that he is indeed where he says he's going to be, or check in with his individual therapist to make sure he's showing up and working. So all those kind of things that you may instinctively say, I felt like I needed that, um, but then I had someone invalidating telling me that that was unreasonable. um, and then with the grief, I can't seem to get anything done, and I've lost a lot of context. I think it's kind of starting back and starting to
Mm-hmm.
list what was lost,
Mm-hmm.
right? The bubbly self, the outgoing person, being productive. And that's when you kind of start breaking things down to really tiny, attainable things. Productive. If I just get groceries this week, I'm going to give myself all the credit in the world. If I just get my kids out of the house and to school, I'm going to celebrate those kind of things. Bubbly, outgoing person, you might not be able to be the person making all these jokes and sending all these funny memes and being hilarious like you were right now, because your brain's really busy just trying to keep you alive and safe and figuring out next steps. But when there's those tiny glimmers, those tiny moments where you are able to laugh, where you are able to watch something on TV that you found to be very funny, or something great you wanted to share with another person, is really revel in those tiny moments again, because that's a sign that your trauma response isn't 24/7, and a little part of your old self can come back again.
Yeah, I give yourself space and grace, and like, uh, what grounds you, what makes you feel good. But yeah, like Krista was talking about too, it's like you've been told by someone else that your reality isn't your reality. The gaslighting, the blame shifting, all of those, like the lies that an addict is living, that secret life and all of that. So it really does hinder a partner's ability to trust themselves. But I always feel like trust your gut, and I think there's always this internal thing where you go like, this is my truth, and all of the words that an addict is saying to you, all of that is just chatter. So and if you can trust, you can probably look at your and go like, I was accurate about this one, so I'm going to trust that myself on that. But I really do find, and I'm big on connecting with other people and going like, this is what I'm thinking. But it's
Mhm.
really helpful because sometimes, I'm spot on. But when I'm having that wavery moment, it's like I just want to validate that what I'm seeing, I'm not missing something, or there isn't another lens. And sometimes there is. Sometimes, and it's usually if I'm seeing something in a really negative light, there's another perspective, and that's why I reach out to somebody else, because I want to get it reframed so that I've got an accurate lens. So I find other people to be really helpful on my journey. So okay, the next one is, do you have any advice for those of us diagnosed with PTSD and suffering from intrusive thoughts, mind movies, replaying and or replaying the visualizations that trigger you all the time. And ads visualizing my husband acting out, watching it all day like a movie in my head, making me feel insane and cry all the time. I
You're not
hate that.
alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not alone. That is betrayal trauma, and that's right. It's not just about the cheating. It's all of this that you have to deal with now because your body's recorded it as something so unsafe and so scary, and there's so much fear and hyper arousal around it. EMDR is a type of therapy intervention I've started to use, that I've been working on my certification in. I do find it effective. I have a webinar on, God, I can't remember what it's called, but it's essentially talking about the ways that you can heal trauma. Like it's something about stress, anxiety, trauma, kind of the way your brain heals that. And generally speaking, all therapeutic interventions tend to need to involve a couple components, which is you, like it or not, kind of have to not to talk about what happened to you, the intrusive memories, the thoughts, have it done with somebody who can validate you. I understand why you were scared. That's reasonable. And then there has to be a part where you create a story of empowerment around it afterward, right? Because your brain, as long as it feels extremely powerless and like it has no choice or context or control in the matter, it's going to have an extremely traumatized response to it. So you want to incorporate a story of like, okay, but now if I find out that he's doing it again, I get to leave. Or, he's in recovery now, or I'm checking X, Y, and Z to see, or we're doing some kind of structure of accountability, or he's acting differently. And these are the stories that you can tell your brain, if they're true, to help calm them down. But a lot of people who study trauma find that, for better or worse, needing to expose yourself a little bit to what's happened. For EMDR, they kind of say it almost as if it's like, pretend like you're riding on a train or driving a car and you're like looking out at the traumatic event happening, like not I'm physically in that traumatic moment again. So you're kind of watching it from the outside looking in to give yourself some emotional regulation space. And that, when it's exposed over and over again, it lowers the physicality of it, the physical response that happens from it, that really overwhelming. And the idea with EMDR too is that the words are reprocessing, right? Desensitizing, right? Lowering the charge of the memory and reprocessing it to put it back in a place and space where you can realize there's a way to assert some level of power and control where you felt there was none.
Well, and the replacing is really important because otherwise, I've been the recipient of EMDR. I've done it, on a personal basis, and it was, addressing this, but then reprocessing to have a different message. And so, but with this particular person, this is, I hate when partners have discovery and they see too much, like they find all of the stuff on, and it's very graphic and the gory details, or when they either ask for, because I need to know the truth, or the person goes, I want to feel better, I want to share, I want to get it all out there. And again, there's no framework to protect the partner. And so then, I often hear about this where it's the intrusive thoughts, the visualizations, I can't get this out of my head, and it can be very problematic because you do get stuck in that. So getting professional help, like Kristin is saying, doing a few sessions of EMDR might help just with those particular visualizations and give you some bandwidth. But again, yes, you're diagnosed with PTSD. I think every betrayed partner, has on some level, post-traumatic or chronic post-traumatic stress disorder. I just like that unfortunately is,
Absolutely.
Part
I
of
agree.
it. So it's horrible, but true. And now, okay, this is true. So now what do we do about it? So, Okay, next question. Addict, boundaries needed, but when do boundaries go too far? Like, and you need to lose 20 pounds. Should the addict just fall on this order? Is there a healthy conversation despite the obvious betrayed partner state that that's my fault?
This is a great question, and there's absolutely a healthy conversation needed. Because don't forget, an addict, a lot of the reasons why they've done what they've done is because they've not done the work to kind of become fully integrated within themselves. Say, oh, I have these feelings. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I want to do about these feelings. And so these are the healthy ways I'm going to process the feelings, get through the feelings. Get to the other side, because now I know who I am, and the choices I want to make and the priorities I want to set up in my life. And that's a person living in recovery. Um, but an addict who's in active addiction isn't thinking about any of those kind of things. They just, I don't like, I act.
Mhm.
This is overwhelming. I seek a way to distract or numb or, get out of this state. So I always want addicts to think, to some level, while they do need to kind of keep a fellowship around them to help them make good decisions and process, is this reasonable, is this unreasonable, this is what's going on. I do want them to assert, like, this doesn't feel right, I don't like this, I'm uncomfortable with this. They have every right to have a conversation about that with their partner. And here's a really great way of approaching it. Boundaries are created to help with the level of vulnerability that exists when I'm trying to exist, build a life, expose myself to the risk of loving another person, right? I can't control him. I can't control what he decides, but boundaries are this kind of way that he and I can say, all right, but these are kind of the rules of what helps me feel safe. These are things that this is okay and this is not okay. So whenever there's a boundary, like you're giving the example of lose 20 pounds, my first question would be, that really confuses me. How does me losing 20 pounds help you feel safer in this relationship? How is this meeting the need of us building trust or creating your willingness to be vulnerable? An example that reminded me is I had a client who was saying his wife wanted him to quit Diet Cokes. And he's like, that just seems really absurd. But when we got farther down the line of why Diet Cokes, it's usually, again, that's the content, stop drinking so many Diet Cokes. The real contextual thing was, he would come home with such erratic emotion, and he'd come home and just like make our lives miserable, that I wondered if it was something going on with the 19 Diet Cokes he had in a daytime. I'm just literally trying to come up with, like, how can we create safety and peace and stability in our life again? And I wonder if he ate healthier and didn't drink, 19 Diet Cokes with a ton of caffeine, if that would lead to more stability. So when I see something, like when I hear a betrayed partner saying, oh, and you need to lose 20 pounds, I'm just like, I wonder what story she has around the 20 pounds, he or she, I don't know if the gender. Is there some story where it's like, wow, if someone's in recovery, they're making more thoughtful decisions. And if they're making more thoughtful decisions, they're maybe, because often there's co-addiction that occurs, right? I could be a sex addict, a porn addict, a substance abuser, an overeater, an undereater, an overworker, an underworker. And it's oftentimes betrayed partners will be asking for something in that
Mhm.
co-occurring addiction thing. And so it's really important to follow up that boundary to say, I need more information. How is this contributing to you setting some kind of boundary or consequence structure that helps you feel safer? Um, how does me losing 20 pounds make you feel safer? What's going on there? All this stuff is always about, like I said, these three categories. There's some kind of trauma response happening, some kind of shame response happening, or some kind of struggle in the grief and loss, like the struggle with letting go of something that is gone or no longer in existence and trying to replace it with a new reality. So that's a really great way of kind of, okay, which category is this in right now?
Yeah, I was thinking, well, first of all, if I start a conversation with you need to, it never goes well.
Right.
I mean, it just
No.
never goes well.
No.
Now I could say, gosh, honey, I'm concerned about your health, and the doctor suggested, recommended, whatever, that that losing weight could help you lower your blood pressure or whatever. Is there something I could do to help support you with that? Like, we could go for walks, or I mean, whatever it is, that's a completely different than somebody going, you need to do whatever, and
Yep.
as an addict, honest to goodness, like even at this point in my journey, if somebody tells me what I need to do, I dig my heels in, and I have to overcome that and go, again, like you said, what is the real message you're trying to tell me? Of like, I mean, because I'm going like, and so to me, a lot of it is having the conversation of like, again, what is really behind this, and is there a way to achieve this? But 100%, I can't tell you how many people that I've seen come into the rooms of 12-step, and as they have some time in recovery, their weight changes. Usually they're gaining weight because they're replacing with something else, and that's just one aspect. That's a visible one, and again, no shame or blaming, but it's like, if I'm
No.
using something else to numb out or escape, that isn't healthy. So perhaps the underlying message is, gosh, I want you around, I want you healthy, and so for your health, it comes off as blaming or shaming, or you need to do. So for me, if I'm open, like Kristin said, if I'm open to tell me more about this, if I'm curious, or the story I'm telling myself is there's more to this, than what I'm making up, so yeah, like, welcome to life.
Yeah, those are master ninja relationship skills that I still try to remind myself. Anytime my partner is acting in a way that I would rather not have him act, because I want to control everything and I want it to go exactly the way I want it to go, it can always go down to an issue of safety. They're telling themselves some story, there's some kind of fear, there's some kind of issue going on, and I don't hear it that way. But God, how different our relationship would be if every time my partner was struggling and I'd be like, you look unsafe. How can I help you?
That's
You
your
look like
first go-to,
you
isn't it,
look like you're
Kristin?
having a hard time. How can I help you?
Yeah. We should practice that.
Like
I'm gonna
all
write that
day, every
down.
day
I
in
know.
life.
I'm gonna
Like
write
the
that
really
down.
mean lady in the grocery store, you just like, you look like you're feeling really unsafe. How can I help
Yeah.
you?
I honestly, that I don't go to say that, but like I look at people, I try to, because I go, whoa, and then I go, wait, that person's probably having a really bad day, and
Right.
if I can even just smile, like, it shifts it for me, rather than being this judgmental, what is wrong with you, you're taking up space in the grocery store,
Yep.
like, it just changes it. Like, I have no control over anybody else, but I can control how I act and react. And I don't want to be mad at the mean person in the grocery. I mean, who knows what just happened in her life,
Right.
So yeah. So I'm gonna work on practicing more of that. You look really unsafe. If you feel like you're having a negative feeling, can I be supportive? So I
Right.
promise I'm gonna practice
But
that
not
more.
too nice, because then you could be
No, no, no.
patronizing.
No, I don't
So
want to
it's
be
like,
patient. No, no, no. But
sounds
like,
like
if I
you're
can,
having a hard time. How can I
yeah,
help you?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep. Rather than okay, there's one more question then,
Oh,
because
geez,
we're
last
almost out of
minute.
time. So, okay,
Yeah.
my spouse's recovery, which he acknowledges has been extremely slow. We are in therapeutic separation. I outlined my boundaries, and he has contravened an important boundary of not engaging, talking to, or following, looking, or leering at his triggers. We are already in separation. Besides a legal separation and divorce, I do not know what I can do. Any suggestions? I feel angry and resentful each time we go to our couples therapist. I need some help or ideas.
Meaning he's not following
He's
through
not following through. He's
with the
he's
engaging, talking to,
right.
following, looking, and
Yep.
leering at his
He's doing
triggers.
all of the problematic behaviors.
Right. And so if we know it's all these three things, that these are the heavy hitters you're getting stuck with: the trauma response, the shame story, the grief and loss. It sounds like each one of those are getting hit by him not following through with your boundary of, I need these I need you to, do those triple A's really fast. Alert, avert, affirm, not engage in these triggers, not leer, not do. I will not feel safe. I will not feel like you're in recovery. I will not feel like you are working towards us and helping us, grow together. And so hopefully you can use these heavy hitter examples to say, this is not healing my trauma. I'm in deep shame that I keep exposing myself to this. And I am grieving the loss of, you may never get your stuff together. Like, you may never actually have the humbleness or accountability or follow through that I need to let my neurobiology heal and feel safe and intimate again. So I validate your anger. I validate your resentment. Those are physical, really visceral experiences, emotions that are telling you I'm not safe. And yeah, I mean, you might feel like you're doing the insanity cycle, talking about the same stuff over and over and over again, and not getting the results you need to feel safe. And so there's just some stuff to consider.
And I'm going to quick add, we don't even, if he's not willing to do the work, then couples therapy, there's a certain point when couples therapy is really recommended. But if that's not helping,
Right.
if you're having such a reaction, somebody used once that going to couples therapy when one of you isn't really ready is like rowing a boat with one oar. You're doing all the work, you're paddling like crazy, but you're going in circles. And so perhaps for you, just an idea is, until you're able to do the work and be able to meet me to be in this relationship, I'm going to go to my therapist, you work with yours. And then, I mean, as for you and timing and legal action and all of that is, that is up, that's up
It's
to
hard.
you.
It's a lot
Yeah.
that's a lot of grief, meaning
Yeah.
not like, don't give me grief, but there's a grieving process that has to occur for you to stop the insanity cycle.
But if
Of like,
going to the couples therapist is so highly triggering that that's it, I'm going to go work with my qualified professional who's going to support me in all of this trauma stuff. You do your work and see. So thank you,
yeah.
Kristin. It was great to see you. Bye, everybody. Thank you. See
Happy
you
New
next
Year,
week.
everyone. Thank you
Eddie
so much.
Caparucci's on fear is next week. Join us. Bye.